Hello, everyone. Welcome to Kids4Kids webinar series, celebrating 10 years of empowering kids. I'm Mabel C. In Kids4Kids, we believe in the power of children and youth, that they're capable of and interested in making a difference in the world they live in. Our belief, you're never too young to change the world, is the basis of all the work we do in Kids4Kids. In 2020, we held 4 webinars on topics related to our core values. We talked about entrepreneurship and creativity, finding your passion and living it. We also discussed about how to build resilience from within and the importance of empathy. In the new year of 2021, while we're setting new goals and thinking about our new direction or what we want to achieve this year, we'd like to invite you to rethink the meaning of success. What is success? How do you define it? Traditionally, we often associate success with wealth, power, and position. Some may define it as having family and friends who love them. Others may define it as being very popular on social media. Whatever it is, I think this question is worth asking ourselves again. So today, we're very happy to have a successful restaurateur to share his insights with us. Please welcome Syed Asim Hussain, founder of Flagship Restaurants.
Hi Mabel, how are you? Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Well, it's so wonderful that you're with us here today, and we're so looking forward to listening to your stories. So my first question to you is, you founded Black Sheep Restaurants in 2012. Can you tell us about why you found the group at that time? What were you trying to achieve?
I am a restaurant kid. I was born in, we discussed this a little bit in the pre-interview. But I was born in and around when I was born, my father was a restaurateur. He had a few restaurants in Hong Kong. So some of my earliest memories come from being in and around his restaurants. So for me, this restaurant world is a really big part of my identity. It's who I am as a person. I went to university in the US. I worked in finance for 4.5 years, 5 years, but the pull to come back home to Hong Kong and do something in the world of hospitality was too strong. I couldn't sort of resist the urge. So I moved back to Hong Kong around 2009, 2010. I started working with a prominent restaurant group at that time. It is there I met my now business partner, Chris. We felt that we had a lot of similar ideas, similar philosophies, similar energy, and we really wanted to sort of build. We wanted to build restaurants and express ourselves creatively, but more importantly, we wanted to build a strong sense of community around our work, a community that represented the values that we believe in as individuals, as leaders, as restaurateurs. So that's how the Black Sheep movement started. I'll give you a little bit more color on this, which is that we really wanted to build a restaurant team that folks that were part of the restaurant team could be proud of. That was the original sort of impetus behind starting Black Sheep Restaurants.
That's wonderful. Like when we look at the pictures that you sent us about all your restaurants in your group, like they're really wonderful, atmospheres and everything. And I remember seeing on your website, and you mentioned something really, really beautifully and very poetic about a story behind all the dining experience. Can you share a little bit about what stories are you actually trying to tell your customers through the dining experience in your restaurants?
So we have close to 30 restaurants in Hong Kong, and we have one in Shanghai. This one that we are on right now is actually from Shanghai, Canton Disco. All our restaurants are very personal to us. We often talk about this creative well that we have that is made up of childhood memories, things that we experience in our travels, nostalgia, things that we've read about. So it's just an exploration of sort of different cuisines, cultures, and that's where our restaurants come from. So our restaurants come from a very personal place. We're looking at Fukuru right now. And Fukru sort of is our love letter to Tokyo izakayas. You know, Chris and I and members of the team have spent a lot of time in Tokyo over the years, trying to source ingredients and meet chefs and so on and so forth. So our work comes from a very, very personal place. So this is why, you know, you see that sentence on the website that says, we're trying to tell stories through food. I also think that our work is very experiential. I think on good nights, on nights where we really hit it out of the park in our restaurants, boys and girls that are part of our service teams are like actors in a play. So that's where this notion of experiential dining or telling stories through food comes from.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I definitely remember my favorite dish when I was a child. What's yours? Do you have a favorite dish in your childhood?
You know, asking me what my favorite dish is like asking a musician what their favorite song would be. I don't think I have one. And I'm extremely passionate about food and drink, but what I'm more passionate about is building communities, building people. You know, if you ask me why we're successful, we are successful because we've been able to create this amazing sense of community around the work that we do. Our restaurants are beautifully designed and the food's amazing, but the real magic is our culture. This amazing world-class culture that we built. You know, this is, I know we're going to talk about this a little bit later, and I'm jumping the gun, but the last year and a half, 2 years for us have been impossibly difficult. And we're all still here. All 30 of our restaurants are still open. All of Black Sheep hasn't had to make any redundancies. And if you ask me what the reason for that is, I think the reason is this sort of strong sense of culture that we have within our world. Our values are very clearly spelled out. We clearly understand who we are. There's a lot of connectivity between individuals in our world. That really is the secret sauce. It's sort of beyond for us as hospitality kids. It's beyond food and drink.
I'm loving what I'm hearing. You know, like since you brought it up, you know, let's talk about COVID. COVID-19 pandemic, you know, we're still in the midst of it, and everybody suffers, all businesses suffer. And I know that during the period, you did something very special. You published something called the COVID-19 playbook, which has been shared, you know, like really, really worldwide, from Argentina to Australia, and also not just in your business, it's actually different businesses and also some governments. And it's been translated into 5 languages. So I'm very interested to know more about this playbook and also what inspired you to write it in the first place.
You know, I think what's really, why this playbook has gone viral and everyone's used it, like you said, from beyond the hospitality world, beyond folks in hotels and restaurants. You know, just I'll tell you an interesting story. Just last week, we were interviewing someone from Chicago, and they said that the mayor's office in Chicago was handing out copies of our playbook. We didn't even know that the mayor's office in Chicago was using our playbook. The response has just been silly, overwhelming. Something that we couldn't think, we couldn't compute. It's still unbelievable at times. We've been on calls with world leaders from all different parts of the world, but I think the reason why our playbook resonated is because it's written in a very sincere manner. Where in our playbook, we're not pretending to be healthcare experts or pandemic experts or COVID experts. We're just saying that we're equally scared and confused, but here are things we are doing within our world to keep our people safe. I think we're really big in the Black Sheep world on doing things in a sincere manner. I think the playbook is a good manifestation of that, and that's why it resonated. It's written in a very direct, sincere manner, and we're saying we're not sure if it's going to work or not, but here are things we're doing in our world to keep our people safe.
Right.
I wanted to also share that this this thing now sort of looks a little bit slick, but the original version of the playbook, I always carry my notebook and I write things. The original version of the playbook was in my notebook. We just came together as a leadership team, and we said, we realized very quickly that if this was in Wuhan, and this is Jan 2020, we realized very quickly that this was going to be knocking on our door in Hong Kong because of how much connectivity there is between Wuhan and Hong Kong. So we got our leadership team together, and we said, if and when this thing comes, what are we going to do to keep people in our world safe, two, keep our restaurants open. I also want to remind listeners that COVID came to our doorstep after we had already been reeling from two quarters of social unrest in Hong Kong. So our problems didn't start Jan 2020. Our problems started months before that. I'm strictly economically speaking. So we've been in between a rock and a hard place for a long, long time now. And like you said, it's going to continue to be this way, I think, for the next few quarters at least.
Well, unfortunately, I think we're all facing the same kind of unstable situation right now. And the work of Kids4Kids is also, really negatively affected. Although, we've changed everything, all our programs online immediately. But I think the schools being closed and also students having to actually adjust to all the Zoom lessons is a challenge. But I want to throw back the question to you. I think yesterday when we were talking, I really like the point when you say that you are actually very tired, because of the whole situation, like a year ago until now, and then crisis after crisis, and then you have to take care of all the restaurants, and you are a human being, you are tired, So I want to ask you, in this kind of situation, how do you keep going on?
Oh, I'm beyond tired. I think even tired would be an understatement. Something that my leadership team doesn't know is when all of this is over, I'm going away on a long vacation, and I won't tell them where I'm going, and I won't answer their phone calls or emails. Look, there's this sense of duty. We're a community of 1,000 strong. We rely on each other, and we need to continue to stand united. It's so easy to sort of shirk from responsibility in this environment. There's so much chaos and confusion, but I think what keeps me going on a very personal level is this sense of duty. I was talking about having really clearly spelled out values. I'm really proud of how clearly spelled out our values are. We all know, if you ask someone on my leadership team who we're about, they'll be able to tell you in a few sentences. But if you only practice your values when the music is playing, when the times are good, then they're not values, they're just hobbies. We've really been tested, and I'm really proud of the fact that we've given a great account of ourselves thus far.
And when I looked at your playbook, the content, I was very, very impressed with how detailed everything is, from protocols to communications and also actual forms for people to fill in. And I'm very interested in your communication responsibility. You have pages about internal communication to your staff. You have also pages of external communication to customers. So I think, from reading that, I feel that you are someone who really value, being able to communicate to people who work with you and also to people that you're serving. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, we have a great communications team, but beyond that, I thank you for noticing that. That is something that's very important to me. We're a largish team now, 30 restaurants spread all over Hong Kong with one restaurant in Shanghai, and making sure that this clarity around messaging is everything. When we started 9 years ago, the entire Black Sheep team could fit around one dining table. So clear communication was important back then too, but now it's just critical. We won't survive without it. And in a world where there's so much information and misinformation and chaos and confusion, we've really had to make sure that we're communicating, one, real time, and two, in a clear manner. one thing I've also learned is I've also learned that even saying I don't have the answers, I don't know, is also clear communication. You know, talking about government restrictions that we operate under. They're changing every few weeks, and just to sort of stay on top of what's happening and what the changes are, it's you have to sort of be on your feet. You have to understand what the new mandate is, and then it has to sort of trickle down within your organization. So I think we can still do a better job, but we do a good job at internal communication.
Do you ever consider, you know, like the how widely your playbook has been?
Do I ever sleep? No, I don't.
No, that's not the question, you know, but thank you for the answer. About how widely your playbook has been shared actually across industries and also countries, you know, like somebody actually I was talking to today was saying to me, you know, that the food industry is a very competitive environment.
Yeah.
And is there a part of you thinking that, you know, like, why do you want to share it with other people?
What happened initially was, so in Jan, we started sort of what's a very slick playbook now on our website. A few quarters ago, it was just a few pieces of paper that we were sharing around internally, saying this is what we are going to do on the restaurant level to keep our team members safe, our guests safe, and keep our doors open, because that was also important. You know, we had to sort of keep our businesses open for just to make sure that there's some revenue coming through the door. Then what started happening back in Feb and March is we started getting calls from our contemporaries and our peers in the industry in Hong Kong, asking us. I do think that we are leaders in the ecosystem that we exist in. We started getting calls from folks asking us what we are doing to combat this thing. So we just decided to make our resources public. We felt that, but the ambition never was to sort of share it with politicians in the US and folks in fashion in Paris and other restaurateurs in Sydney and Melbourne. The extent of the ambition was maybe Hong Kong hotel and restaurant industry. Maybe it helps them, but what happened after that was just wild. But I'll come back to what I said to you maybe earlier, which is I think it resonated because it's written in a very truthful, sincere manner. We're not pretending to be experts. We're saying we're as scared as you are, but here's stuff we're doing within our community to keep our people safe.
That's wonderful. And I'm going to turn to a rather difficult question now. Yes. Recently, I know you had to handle a crisis situation of someone not observing the safety rule, as you implicitly, you know, written in your playbook, and that happened in one of your restaurants. And yesterday you were sharing with me a little bit. I want you to share with the audience how you handled it.
Look, you know, I think you're talking about there was an issue at one of our restaurants. So we've been really proud of these protocols that we built, and I'm also really big on practicing what we preach. But there was a situation a few weeks ago where we got caught with our hand in the cookie jar. There was an event at one of our restaurants, and we weren't following some of the protocols, and it was a really embarrassing moment for us as a team. And I think, one, it was embarrassing. I wasn't really proud of the work that we had done. Two, I felt that we had sort of broken some trust too with the community that we are part of. But what's more important to me is how are we going to come back from this? We're not going to let mistakes define us. You know, we're not perfect. It's really boring. We're not perfect, but we are in a relentless pursuit of excellence. We didn't spend too much time harping on what had gone wrong and pointing fingers and this and that. I do think that there's some pandemic fatigue setting in. We're all just tired of talking about COVID. I'm proud that we started focusing on what the resolution needs to be. How are we going to learn from this? Just really sort of converting this moment of despair and defeat into a learning opportunity. You know, we said that we won't let this opportunity go by. We're gonna learn from this. We're gonna get better, and that sort of is the black sheep mentality. When we you know, we were. I'll borrow this from baseball. We're up to bat lots of times, and we're not hitting home runs all the time. We sometimes we take losses, but we don't let the losses define us. We just keep plowing through.
I like you use the word mentality, which is actually my next question. Because today we're talking about the key ingredients of success, right? And I want to know what ingredients are yours, you know, to define your success. And especially when we're talking about not just the skill sets that we always talk about when we talk about being a leader, but the mindset. So I want to know, you know, what sort of mindset do you have that makes you successful?
The first thing I want to say on this is that I don't think I'm successful. I know we've done really good work. I think we are one of the best restaurant teams in the world. But we're a young team. We're aspirational. This is not the extent of our story. We really sincerely think that this is the start. That this is the start of our story. I want us to become. We'll always be Hong Kong's home. We'll always be born and raised in Hong Kong. But I want us to sort of become a global restaurant brand. But coming back to me personally, I have an issue with complimenting myself and praising myself. But if you really press me, I would say that I pursue excellence relentlessly. Good enough is not good enough for me. Things can always be better. I'm very dogged. I'm very resilient as a person. If you had to sort of really press me and ask me what makes me different, I would say it's this. I'm really dogged and determined and resilient. Even when we have bad days, I don't let us feel like there are bad days. They're just learning moments, learning opportunities. Like I said earlier, I really think that this is the start of the start for us. You know, we're all a young team, and I am not going to allow us to be complacent. Our best years are still ahead of us. And also we have gigantic ambition as a young scrappy Hong Kong restaurant team. We want to take over the world.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'm gonna stop here for a moment. You know, like, we're gonna come back to you, Asim. So stay with us. I'm sure, you know, in the Q&A, a lot of people are going to ask you some more questions, which are going to be very interesting to hear. So now let me turn to our second speaker, Avinash Bharwaney. Avi is a person who is very, very close to Kids4Kids. He's starting out in his first career right now. And so please welcome Avi joining our webinar together. Hello, Avi. How are you?
Hi there. How you doing? I really enjoyed that, Asim. Looking forward to
Yeah, it's really nice to have you here today. And it's a great conversation with Asim, you know, and now is for you to share with us your take, you know, as 23 years old. But first of all, I want you to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure thing. Avi, I was born and raised here in Hong Kong, so local Hong Konger. I was at international school, so I was at RCHK, Renaissance College, anybody, for about 7 years. I graduated from there back in 2015. Wow. When you said 23, it sort of caught me off guard. It's a bit hard feeling that old. Oh, I see a little woohoo RC. Miss Wilson, wow, okay. My teacher from RC is also joined. That's really great to see. And then I was at HKUST for about 5 years. I studied business there, and then here I am. I started my first job back in September amidst the chaos and everything from the pandemic and the social unrest that Asim mentioned. But yeah, doing decently.
Yeah, and Avi, you have a pretty long history with Kids4Kids, and you've done a lot of things with us in the past when you were much younger. Can you share with us what you did with Kids4Kids as well?
Sure, sure. So I might just quickly start just at the beginning of how I sort of got, oh my God, there it is, the picture. If you pay attention, you'll see me wearing skeleton pants. So I hope that my fashion sense is, I hope, improved since then. Oh God, yeah, wow, that was a long time ago. So I joined Kids4Kids. I actually participated in something called the Powered by Youth Forum back in 2010. And this is the Powered by Youth Forum, I think this is 2014 or 2013. So 2010 I started, and I think it was David Bigby and Michelle Lai, both of whom inspired me greatly. But I didn't really participate further. And it was only until the next year in 2011 that I actually participate and join one of the project teams called Market Day. And that was really my first, that was the inception, genesis point of my Kids4Kids journey. And then from there, it's been everything from buddy reading to, there was, again, PYF again, and a couple other side projects that I was involved in and had a great time. And I'm so glad that we're still in touch.
Wonderful. And I know you do a lot of stuff when you were only like 13, 14 or 15 years old. And it always amazed me, like when I looked at the young people today and also the young people who are working with Kids4Kids today, their enthusiasm and everything. And I know for a fact that you do it because you feel that you are able to gain something, right? So my next question is, of all the years that you're serving others with us, what did you learn, and what is that you feel you actually gained that gives you that kind of hook back and do more, to serve more?
Definitely. I think if I could just go back a bit. So I think back when I was in Kids4Kids, there was something called the Advocates Leadership Team. It's still going very strong now. And that's a select group of, I think there's like 10 to 15 kids every year that gets in, and they work on stellar projects. And that was like, I think, the pinnacle of Kids4Kids for me. And I think there were two sides to that ALT, as we called it. The first side was the management. That's a bit boring. The management was the project management, the KPIs, the presentations, the event planning. But I'm not going to discount that at all. I think that was actually one of the best parts of Kids4Kids, mainly because I didn't realize how important it was back then. It was just like, oh, we're planning an event, right? But you fast forward so many years, and now I'm sitting here and I'm doing the same thing, whether it be at work, whether it be outside of work, and this ability to communicate, this ability to, I guess, inspire and work with people and work on really cool things. I have to give Kids4Kids credit for all that support in training me and helping me develop from that management side. But I mean, you guys, no one's here to listen about management, right? Today isn't about management. Today is about serving. And I think that is then the cake. The cake of Kids4Kids really was, and like you said, the hook. It really came from this ability to interact with people. Now, a lot of our projects, you can sort of dissect them into two groups. One was more like Market Day. We were setting up a market to raise funds. That's more like fundraising, very event heavy. But then you have outreach, and outreach was like the element that I fell in love with. And Kids4Kids is, I think, this is their main event is buddy reading. This is the main program that Kids4Kids, the flagship program of Kids4Kids that was launched back then. And buddy reading basically is branching out into the community and working with a number of either other partners, whether it be schools or other NGOs, and matching them with volunteers to provide reading and literacy services. So I think that through buddy reading was really where I learned to connect with people. I think that was a big difference. Learned to connect with people that actually needed my help. And I was able to actually form bonds with people. I think there was one memory I was sharing with you, Mabel, where I was working with this one kid. And it was over a year. I mean, no one can pick up that much language ability in such a short period of time, but it was over a year that you're able to see them grow. And that hit me so hard. I was like, wow, day one, you're shy, you don't want to really read in front of other people. But then after 1 year, you see this kid who's grown up and is able to present very confidently in front of the entire class. And the fact that I had anything to do, even just the slightest, to help that kid progress, that really hit me. That was one of the biggest hooks of Kids4Kids.
Well, that's really wonderful to hear. Like it's so nice to have you back to Kids4Kids as well. For the audience, if you don't know yet, Alfie is actually one of our alumni, and then he's offered to come back to help us. After 10 years time, I mean, like to us, it's actually, like it's just really, really nice and really, really rewarding. And this is the reason why we keep on to do the work that we're doing. And so, Avi, you've heard a lot about Asim's, experience, a sharing of what success is, although he's very humble and then he doesn't think that he's very successful. Well, you started out in your career, right? And you're now a trainee. And at this point, in this phase of your life, how do you define success for yourself?
Here it comes, the big question of the night. This is a very difficult question. I think that I've had some time to refine and sort of think about what success means. I think we were discussing this yesterday, and I went on a massive rant about, philosophically, is it an end state? Is it a continuous progression? But let's push that all aside for now. And I think I have a bit more refined 3-step answer to this. It's not exhaustive, but I'll try my best. So when I think of success, I think of 3 things. The first is vision, the ability to see clearly. The second is ownership. I think Asim mentioned this. It's this idea of duty and responsibility and ownership of your own life. I think this message of be the CEO of your own life really sticks. And the last aspect is consistency and resilience. And that's something, again, Asim mentioned as well. So I'll quickly start with vision. Now, what does vision really mean? So in my head, vision means having an audacious goal. So for instance, in Asim's case, it was becoming a global brand, a global restaurant brand. I love that, the idea of having a big, audacious goal and going for it. But vision also means to be able to see the entire picture, which is very difficult at times because sometimes we're pushed in life, and I'm feeling it right now, into your career, into anything, and suddenly your worldview starts getting narrow. It starts narrowing. You have blinders on. And the worst part is we're in a system where there's so much, as I think was mentioned earlier, misinformation is being spread. We don't know what's right and wrong anymore. And that's a big issue in today's society that I hope we're working towards. So having vision is the ability to see clearly. And that's something that I'm trying to work towards. I haven't got there yet. It's very hard to work towards, but I hope is something that everyone can try to work towards. To be able to see, of course, an audacious goal that you work, but also to be able to identify other opportunities and be agile to capture them if need be. So that's vision from my side. The second is ownership. So I think that was already covered, but this idea of, hey, internal locus of control versus external locus of control. Who controls your life? And it's a very stoic mentality. If anyone's read any stoicism, any of that content, and it's very much geared to this idea that there should not be excuses that run your life. It can't be the weather or somebody else's influence that in turn affects the way that you act and you think. So I think that idea of saying, okay, it's your job to wake up on time, to do X, Y, Z, and to get your stuff done is your job. And I think that idea of internalizing that every single day is important. And then finally, consistency. I was reading something about the mundanity of excellence. I don't know if Asim agrees with me on this, but I think the most successful people are actually pretty ordinary. And that's actually what is shared a lot. Even Asim said, he thinks he's not successful, right? That's such a contradiction to all of us here today. And why is that? I think that's because at the end of the day, success it's not an overnight success where you suddenly, go crazy. It's that price is in all the hard work over years, over late nights working that people put in to get somewhere, right? So I think just going back to that, this idea of having a vision to see the field, to go for that audacious goal, to own it, and then be consistent in that follow through. That's the sort of answer I want to give today.
Right. Yeah. Looking forward in the next 10 years, which areas do you most want yourself to be successful on? Is that another difficult question for you?
Very difficult question. But I think just to make it very simple and to think about it in a very simple context, going from a me to a we perspective, and I can just share some of my own personal reflection is, once I finished high school, uni hit me, and uni was all about, finding your career, getting a good job, getting good pay, and all that brainwashing. It's not bad, I would say, but it was there very physically, very tangibly in the university environment. Led us all to sort of think about that. And that was the main focus for a good 4 to 5 years. And then you get your job, and then it's just getting a promotion or whatever else is important to your life. But the idea that I was reflecting upon last night was, success is great, but it's great when it's celebrated as a community. I think that's something that's beautiful about the Black Sheep group, is that the whole idea, anything that's done well, it's a group thing. Anything that's not done well is also a group thing. It's a community that binds everyone together. So success isn't a personal thing. And I hope that in the next 10 years, I will shift, and I'm working on that now, but my mentality will completely shift from a me mentality, which I feel is very internalized, to one that appreciates and helps others at all times. to a we mentality. And that's how I'd like to summarize that.
Yeah, well, on that note, I have to bring Asim back, because you mentioned his name so many times. This whole mentality of actually doing something together and being successful together. Asim, do you have any comments about what Avi just said?
I was going to suggest to Avi that his 10-year plan also could be to come help us take our brand global. So he can learn what he's learning now at Jardine Matheson and come help us take our brand global. Look, I was listening very intently. We had some really intelligent thoughts, and I think one thing that perhaps we haven't talked about around success is that I think success also is contentment. Are you content? I think there are lots of different sort of scales of and measures. Internal success, internal success, external success, and for me, I think the most important one is would be contentment, and I think that I am closest to being content when I'm true to my vision and my mission. So the closer I am to my vision would be being a world-class hospitality professional, a world-class restaurateur professionally. The more content I am and the more successful I perhaps feel.
What do you think about that, Avi?
I like that. I like especially the idea of going back to that vision. From my side, I'm very confused about this notion of success. Is it, I'm going to bring that up now, Mabel, if that's okay. Is it an end state? If we ever reach success and then is that it? And I think what Asim's saying is it's not. It definitely is not an end state. And it's a continuous progression to that, I guess, this value element.
I do like what you were saying around that. I think it's a journey. It's not an end state. For example, today or this week rather was a very difficult week in the black sheep world. It was not a successful week. Are we overall successful as a young restaurant company? Yes, we are. So I think it's not an end state, it's a journey. And I think the closer you can be to your vision and your mission, the more content you will be. And in my opinion, the more successful you'll feel.
Definitely. I think this idea of having a predefined set of values, I think you mentioned values earlier. I love that. I think your values, of course, feeds into that mission, but understanding those values and making sure that's very clearly defined. I think a lot of people, like personally, I'm having a bit of difficulty with that. What are my very strong personal values? What are the values of the people I'm working with? And how are they aligned? And being comfortable with that already is like a first step, I think.
I'm really big on values, Avi. Values are really important to me. And having really clearly spelled out values. Values can change, they can evolve. We as people change. But knowing what is important to you or what your truth is really important. When Chris and I started 9 years ago, the most important thing wasn't financial success or Michelin stars or critical acclaim. The most important thing for us was being a restaurant team that folks would be proud of. Folks that were part of the team would be proud of belonging to. So now that that's a value, when on days where we can deliver that, achieve that, we're successful.
Yeah.
Well, it's wonderful to hear you talking about that, and I have some questions already sent to the Q&A box. So if I may remind the audience that if you have any questions for Asim or Avi, you can also type it in the Q&A box now. So the question here is actually very related to what you were just talking about. Like if it's a process, if it's a journey, then you're talking about something that helps you to form that kind of habit. So the questions that I have here is that do you have some habits that are crucial for anyone who wants to be successful, or the habit that you yourself actually hold on to?
Are you asking me?
Both of you.
You want to go first, or?
I'll go first.
Okay.
Because I'm older than you, Avi.
Okay, go ahead.
Like I said before, I'm just relentless. I'm very committed, and I don't lose, even when things don't go my way, I don't lose heart easily. If I put my mind to something, we're gonna get after it. We're gonna achieve it. I have this sort of mental fortitude, which is a big blessing. What about you, Avi?
I'm aspiring for that mental fortitude for sure. in time it comes. In terms of like a tangible habit, I think you also mentioned this earlier, Asim. It's this idea of journaling, and I think that's very much, it's, the narrative is very much available in today's, you know, you see it everywhere in the media. Journaling is all the rage. But I just think literally, it doesn't matter how you do it, whether it be a bullet journal, whether it be writing your thoughts down somewhere, but at the end of the day, or even in the morning, do it twice. Get everything down, all your thoughts, your reflection, because if anyone wants to continuously, like going back to the consistency element, to be and have that vision very much set, it requires thought. You have to go back and visualize and say, okay, what am I actually going for? Because sometimes life hits you in the face and you're so blindsided by the other things that are happening in life that you forget the big picture. And so I think that coming back to that intrinsic core, going back to what he said about values and mission and vision, and reflecting on that every day and seeing how you know, are you calibrated against that? Basically, you varying too far or in a different direction. Having a sense of downtime to actually have that on paper or even just spoken aloud really does help.
It's very uncanny, you know, like in our previous webinar, one of them, actually Vivek was our speaker, and then he was talking about how journaling is so important, you know, for him every day, you know, like to get insights and also ideas, and as a stand-up comedian and everything. And I think, you know, one thing I want to just add in here, you know, like a personal note, is that I think that is also a process where you reflect. And I think reflection is very important. Don't you agree, Asim? You know, think about what you do.
I'm really big on journaling. I also keep my books, all my notebooks, and I keep going back to them. It's also, you know, sometimes it's really refreshing to see what was on my mind 4 years ago and the sort of stuff that I was worried about, or the type of things that I want to accomplish. Journaling is really important. I think it's also cathartic in the way that if you're stressed about things, you just get all your thoughts out, or if you need to sort of get organized, it's a good way for getting organized as well. So I'm really big on journaling, and I keep all my books and I keep going back to them as well.
That's very interesting.
It's a black sheep rule. You can't come to a meeting without a pen and a notebook. You just cannot be I won't meet you if you do not have a pen and a notebook.
Okay, well, here's another question to Asim. I can feel your energy and admire your commitment to excellence. How do you keep up with that both mentally and physically? What's the driving force behind you?
It's a hard question it's a good question. It's a question that sometimes I ask myself too. There is this sort of relentless fire that burns big and burns strong. I just, you know, I'm really committed to this notion of building a world-class hospitality company. I don't know where it comes from, but it's innate. It's in my blood and bones, and I've had it for a long time. We didn't talk about this earlier, but I spent a lot of time as a young boy, as a child, in and around my father's restaurants. I worked there as a teenage boy. For me, this is a team sport that I'm good at. So it just comes to me in a very innate manner. But I do think, especially, you know, in the last year and a half, what's become increasingly important is that I'm also filling my own cup. I'm also doing the things I have to do to look after myself. You know, they say you put your own oxygen mask on first. I wasn't good at that earlier, but I'm trying to get better at that now. Where in order for us to sort of have this world-class ambition, we all the leaders within the black sheep world need to be in a resourceful state, and that sort of starts with me. So I'll admit that I've not always been good at it. I'm still sometimes not good at it, but I'm trying to be better at it. And then it's simple stuff like drinking enough water, sleeping, waking up. You know, we were talking about journaling, and I think another good habit is, and I've always actually had this, is waking up early in the morning. That's when I'm doing all my thinking, between 6 and 8 or so, or 6 and 9. That's where I'm doing my best work every day. So making sort of small improvements in terms of my lifestyle, and understanding what's truly important to me and what's not important to me.
Is it difficult to define or separate the two? What's important and what's not important?
Yeah, it is. It used to be even harder. I have a little bit more wisdom now. I'm in my 30s than I had in my 20s. I had no wisdom when I was in my teenage years. It's getting easier, but it's still a challenge though. You know, we also are in a business where, you know, there's a lot of food and wine and there are beautiful people at night, and you know, it's a very glamorous business that we are a part of. So it's important. It's very important that we keep our eyes on the prize. You know, we're throwing on our best nights, we're throwing Hong Kong's best 30 parties every night, but we're not a part of the party. We're just throwing the party because we have to do it again the next day.
We only have time for one more question, so I'm going to pick this one. You know, it's kind of intimate. Who do you rely on the most when you face difficulties? And also about someone, is there someone that you would like to say thanks to, you know, all through this journey when you're growing up and growing to be the person that you are today?
I rely on my team. I have a world-class team. And sometimes I feel bad because I am often in the spotlight. They're also world-class like I am. I have an amazing team. There's amazing supporting casts around me. And I really rely on them. I've also pushed them a lot, especially the last year and a half. And just to sort of to make it simpler, I try to express my gratitude to them, but there's so much more. It's endless. We wouldn't be here. A lot of the people that started this journey with us are still a part of the Black Sheep team. So we're 9 years old, and these guys are all in their rights, have become hospitality titans. They're the best hospitality people in the world. They understand this game better than anyone else does. So I'm really proud of the team that I have.
Yeah, I totally resonate with you. You know, I love my team too. Afi?
I would have to say my parents for sure. So they've been with me through thick and thin, and doesn't matter what actually happens, we all have each other's backs. Especially, I think over the pandemic, we've all been sort of squished together at home, right? I think everyone sort of faced the same thing where everyone's spending a lot more time with their families. And although they drive me insane, I have to say I love you, mom and dad, and my bro. Thank you so much for supporting me.
Yeah, well, that's really nice to hear. And I don't know, like I usually do this at the end of the interview, you know, like when I was a journalist, you know, I will give the speakers a chance to actually just give us something to take away, you know, just one point that you want the audience, you know, if they, after all the sharing, you know, like we tend to forget. If you want them to remember one thing that you said today, or that you shared today, what is that one point that you want them to remember? So we're going to start with Asim first.
I'll say something that I haven't said yet. I was getting ready for this conversation this morning, and I was thinking that I was reflecting on just my high school years and my teenage years, and I think one message that I want, especially high schoolers or kids in school listening, is that if they haven't figured, I was lucky that I sort of figured out very early what I wanted to do. You know, when I was at the end of university, even though I went off and I worked in finance for a few years, I knew I was going to come back to hospitality. So I was lucky in that sense. But I just want to say that they should stay curious about what it is that they truly want to do. What is it that their heart desires, but not feel pressure if they still haven't figured it out. So some of the most remarkable, exceptional, extraordinary people I know that are older than me still haven't figured out what they want to do. So
and that's okay.
And that's okay. And that's okay. But I would just really implore listeners to have this sort of curiosity about what is it that their heart desires. I think that's really important. And I also admit that I was lucky that I figured out a little bit early that I wanted to be a restaurateur.
Afi?
I like that. I like that a lot. I like the idea of finding your passion. Unfortunately, it's something that I have a lot of, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people on the call also have the same thing where your passion has changed so rapidly. And this idea that, you know, the shiny next object also looks pretty cool. Why not try that? And being open to that exploration. So I think I'm sort of concurring with what you're saying. And this ability to be agile. I think I wanted to mention that I sort of talked about that with the vision idea. I like the idea of deep diving really into something and getting really good at it. But I also am open to the idea of saying, hey, there's also other opportunities. So it's always important to be aware, to meet people outside your circle. And that was something that I was actually speaking to a few friends about is, hey, we're talking to the same people every single day. We're meeting people in finance or in consulting, and we're all in the same circle. We haven't met people, for instance, in the restaurant industry. How cool would that be? Let's do that. I think this idea of opening your wings and opening your information channels, and just meeting people and enjoying life with other people outside your comfort zone is something that is part of this whole idea of getting to the we collective, the idea of the we me to we channel. I think that would be my takeaway is try to meet people outside your comfort zone. And from there, you can see different perspectives and that will help you build up yourself.
That's wonderful. You know, I'm really loving the sharing that we have today and the candid conversation from the both of you. Thank you so much. And for the audience, if you like our conversation, please come back next month. So in February, we're going to have our last webinar. And the webinar represents actually what Kids4Kids is about. What better topic, you know, for the last webinar, celebrating our 10th year anniversary, than talking about our origin story. So we will have our founder, Michelle Lai, sharing with us the origin of the story, you know, how she started the whole foundation, why, and the challenges that she faced, and every step in the way, what is actually on her mind. And now that being awarded as a Shocker Fellow, you know, what does it mean to Kids4Kids, and how does she want to actually take it further, you know, so that the impact will be even bigger. And we're also very honored to have Mark Chan, Director of Ashoka East Asia, to be with us next month. So please, you know, if you love the conversation today and you want to learn with us, you know, please come back again on the 24th of February. And before you go away, I also want to say something to you from the bottom of my heart. You know, like what you're hearing today, and also meeting Afi, one of our alumni in Kids4Kids, also tells you about some of the important works that we're doing for the students in Hong Kong. And I want to introduce you just very briefly to this signature program that we have every year. It's called Action for a Cause. And this is actually the program where students will come to us and then they pitch their ideas about what they want to do to solve a problem that they see in the community. So these projects are totally student-led, and then they're 14 years old, 15 years old, 16 years old in the secondary school years, and then they're already fired up to want to say something or do something for the community. So they pitched to us, and then we selected them. So this year in 2021, we selected 23 teams total, 60 students who they have already started, you know, the projects from a topic on environment or mental well-being or solving poverty and education, you know, all the things that they care about in their age. And we would like to ask you to help us help them by sponsoring the seed fund. So each project, we need $3,000, and the seed fund goes directly to the project. What happens is that from January to June, 6 months, they're going to implement the project they pitch to us. And then we give them the support by offering a corporate volunteer, a collaborator, to be their mentor, to help them and guide them through the 6-month periods. But they will be the person who actually execute the ideas, meet the beneficiaries, and also experience the whole journey of what it means by becoming a change maker. You know, like they will fail. They will actually face a lot of obstacles, or there will be moments when they feel, you know, like they don't know what to do. And some of the people who've actually joined our program have faced challenges of people asking them, you know, like, why should I trust you? And it's a real process in real life, solving real problems. So I would like to ask you to help us, you know, in the new year, if you're making a resolution of trying to do something for the community, help our students make that journey possible. And you might ask me, you know, what are the impacts that I'm expecting from this group of students? I want to share with you at the end of the webinar a very short video of the impacts that were made by last year's team. We have 26 teams last year, and then they did amazing things, and we were so proud of them. You know, they went through the whole 6 months projects period as well, and then they impacted a lot and also helped the people that they care about in Hong Kong. So please stay with me for 2 more minutes and watch the video of our impact made by the students last year. Goodbye and thank you.